Hey folks, I'm Melhorn. In this video, we're going to talk about keeping a catfish bait tank in the winter. Well folks, listen, I know some of you guys are not able to fish all year long like those of us further south. I know a lot of you guys are iced in the wintertime and well, chasing catfish kind of goes by the wayside. But for a large part of the country, the wintertime is the time to be on the water, especially for trophy fish, especially for bigger fish. And it's a time a lot of us look forward to getting out on the water and fishing. You've got a lot more water to yourself. It's pretty much only fishermen out that time of the year. And there are some big catfish biting. Now, if you're having to catch bait yourself, you're not able to buy it. Well, one of the worst things in the world to do is be out there early in the morning on a cold morning trying to catch bait, throwing a cast net, or just trying to catch it on rod and reel. So one of the things that I recommend you do, and that I've done myself for years, is keeping a bait tank at home to keep live bait in. Now, obviously, you can use frozen bait to catch fish. I do that sometimes, nothing wrong with that. And some baits freeze better than others. Frozen skipjack is actually a pretty good bait. We all prefer to have fresh skipjack, but frozen bait works just fine. There's nothing better though than having some live bait. Now I know it's hard to keep skipjack alive, virtually impossible, but your gizzard shad, your perch, your bass where they are legal, you can keep all of those alive in a bait tank at home. There's just a few things you need to do and keep in mind if you're gonna do it. Now, one thing I always recommend this time of the year is swap your water out. I try to cycle my water out about once a quarter, ideally. It's a good time to get your filter out, clean out your filter system, get all the crap out of it. Whatever was living in there during the summertime may actually be dying off now. And I'm no biologist when it comes to what goes on there, but it's a little different setup than having a aquarium setup inside a house that stays a constant temperature all the time. Having one outside like I do, I'm sure there are some different things that go on there in the biology of what goes on in that thing. So I always, in the fall, like to take my filter out, wash it out, clean it out, put new water into the tank, clean out any residue that's in the tank, and kind of start new. Now, one thing to keep in mind in the wintertime, your bait tank can freeze. Even where we're at in the Carolinas, we get into some temperatures where we have sustained, multiple days where it's below freezing. The tank will freeze, and you need to keep this in mind. And it depends what kind of fish you got in there, how well they will survive. I keep a lot of white perch in mine. These fish almost go dormant. They almost get into this catatonic state where they're almost dead, but they're not. Once the water warms back up, they go back to normal. But keep an eye on your tank. If you have one inside of a garage or some area that doesn't get below freezing, that's ideal. Mine's outside, so I just have to deal with it. You can add some warm water to it, but it's really just an exercise in futility at that point, because if it stays cold enough long enough, the tank's eventually gonna freeze. Now, the biggest issue with something freezing like that, depending on how hard the freeze is it can mess up your pump. So if it gets to the point where it's really starting to freeze up, keep an eye on your pump. Depending on where your filter system's at and where your pump's at, you may want to shut that down so you don't tear any blades off of your pump. Now, generally, I will tell you to keep your bait tank in a shaded area in the summertime and most of the year. This is because of algae buildup. Also, heating up the tank. Wintertime, algae is not as much of a problem, so actually having it in the sun and having some sunlight penetration can actually help maybe bring that water temperature up and keep it just a little bit higher. Now, keeping fish alive in the wintertime in a home bait tank is a lot easier than the summertime. If you're starting out with a new bait tank, now's the time to do it, because you will find out that, wow, this works really great. Not so much once the temperatures start to warm up, but when they fall, everything starts to change as far as the demands for oxygen and the oxygen levels, just the whole energy level of the fish. It's just a lot easier in the winter. So it's a good time to have a bait tank. It's a good time to start a bait tank, and it's a good time to kind of get into the process of keeping live bait at home. Again, some fish do better than others in colder, cooler water. I've done really good keeping shad alive, keeping blueback herring alive, and keeping white perch alive. Bass too. If you can use them legally, they will stay alive really well in cooler water temperatures. Bluegill, a little tougher time with those. Some of the other baits that you guys may use, I don't use in my area. Some of the chubs, some of the carp, that type thing. I don't really deal with those. I don't know how they will do in the colder temperatures, but give them a shot. Put some in there. Some of them are very hardy, and you may find out it's a great way to keep these baits alive so you're not out there throwing a cast net early in the morning. Well, folks, if you made it this far, thank you for watching. Here are a couple more videos that I think you're gonna like. I'd watch that one and then that one. No, do that one first and then that one. I don't know, just watch them both. They're both good.